and including at least one member from each house, so we can commence the meeting. We are in public session, and we have apologies from Deputy Dara Murphy. The usual provisos apply in respect of mobile phones and so on, and I propose that we go into private session to deal with some matters before returning to public session. Okay, we're now in public session. First petition for consideration is P4118. I propose that we forward a copy of the response from the Department of Communications, Climate Action and Environment to the petitioner and close the petition. Is that agreed? Agreed.
Could I just commend the petitioner? Yeah, could I just commend the petitioner for sending in the petition? I think we're all conscious of the need to reduce plastic in the usage, and I think in particular in our supermarkets around the issue of plastic waste. And I think, you know, government have made initiatives last week around the issue of use of plastic. But I think the issue of the environment and the issue around shops with packaging is one that we should, through this committee, work with other committees to ensure that we do reduce the use of plastic, especially during a weekly shop where we're bombarded in some supermarkets with plastics for everything. So we'd just like to commend the petitioner for the petition and hope that we can work with other departments and with the All-Party Committee on Climate Change to bring a reduction in plastic.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, so we're agreed anyway that the petition will be closed. Okay, so the next petition for consideration is 4318, and it is proposed that we forward a copy of the response from the Department of Health to the petitioner and close the petition. Is that agreed? Agreed. Next petition is 2918. Propose that we forward a copy of the response from the Department of Health to the petitioner and close the petition. Is that agreed? Agreed. The next petition is 4418. I propose that we forward a copy of the responses from Dublin City Council to the petitioner and close the petition. Is that agreed? Agreed. Next petition is 3616. The proposal is that we forward a copy of the responses from the Department of Justice and Equality to the petitioner, but that we would keep the petition open. I understand, Senator Buttimer, you wanted to communicate it here.
Very briefly, Chairman, just to thank you for agreeing to keep the petition open. I think it's an important issue that is going to become more prominent. The issue of gaming and the issue of gambling around loot boxes and the issue of young people. And I would hope that we as a committee could do a piece of work around this, and I would propose that through your good self-chair that we would do that in the spring.
Deputy Cassells.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to endorse what Senator Buttimer has said on the issue, Chairman, because the petitioner outlines a number of issues in respect of the gambling and gaming industry. It goes into quite an amount of detail in terms of the fact that there's a bookies or a casino in almost every town in Ireland, that there's no body or laws to protect the public from unfair practices by the bookmakers, that it can take a very dark turn and ruin people's lives. I think everyone in this room would have friends or families where those experiences have been recounted. I suppose the petitioner, though, is motivated perhaps on the fact of seeking a regulator based on the fact that the industry can act as a law to themselves. So they make the point that a bookmaker is fully within their rights, that if you put €1 or €1,000 on a 33-to-1 horse running in a race and the horse wins, and the bookmakers are fully within their rights, they can refuse to pay the rightful winnings of €34,000 simply because placing a bet, even if fully within their own terms and conditions, is not a legally binding agreement, and at present there is no body to enforce it. So that is the motivation. There's a number of aspects, as Senator Buttimer has said, that are touched on, but that's the motivation in terms of the placing of a bet and then whether that's a legally binding contract. I know myself last year I had a winner at 40-to-1 in Cheltenham, which was on the docket. By the time I went back to the bookies to get my money, they only played at 33-1 because the odds had changed on screen just the moment of the bet. But they accepted my bet at 40-1. So, you know, these guys can make the law up unto themselves as well. Of course, there are other issues, more issues that I'd be more interested in speaking about. And I know that my own colleague, Deputy Jack Chambers, has introduced a bill in terms of this whole industry as well and regulating them. Because it is, as the petitioner said, something that if you can able to control it, is enjoyable, and nobody's seeking for the state to come down in such a heavy-handed manner that people can't enjoy or bet or go to the horses or the racetrack and so forth. But it is a disease for many people that is worse than alcoholism. It is a disease that can ruin families worse than alcoholism or drugs. It is an industry that will stop at nothing in terms of self-promotion and in terms of infiltrating sport. And I saw it myself with the association, the GAA, that I would have a passion for in terms of trying to infiltrate that. And famously, a number of years ago, a very prominent bookies paid for the boss of a hurl to have their logo across the boss of a hurl for a young player who went out in Croke Park and had the bookies logo across the boss of the hurl, so every time he struck the ball, that was on the television. And the GAA had to amend bylaws to come down on top of that. They will stop at nothing. And there was a lot of crocodile tears as well before Christmas. We were told before Christmas in terms of elements that were brought into the budget, that there'd be bookies out of business on January the 1st. Still open. They're still open. Haven't closed. The house never loses, I can tell you. And so I think that there's a number of aspects here that are certainly worthy of our attention, because I'm telling you, Chairperson, this is a disease that is ruining families. I know, as I said, I've mentioned the GAA, the Gaelic Players Association are having to deal with a number of their players who simply, not just their sporting careers, but their personal lives are being ruined by addictions. As I said, the petitioner is looking for a regulator in the context of having legally binding agreements, but I think, as Senator Buttimer has said, there's a wide range of issues that the petition could also, in my mind, be dealt with as well. Thanks for your indulgence, Chairman.
Thank you, Deputy Cassells. Or Deputy Martin Heydon.
Yeah, I too would like to concur with some of the comments that have been made earlier. I have, while the petitioner is very much focused on the element of where a bookmaker stands, or where somebody who lays a bet with a bookmaker stands afterwards if there's a payout, that is one small area. I do think the Gambling Control Bill that will bring forward the independent regulatory body it was a key decision of government last year that we change from the original proposal, which was to have something in-house in the Department of Justice. I think it's much more. I think it's very important that we do have a standalone body. So ultimately, the petitioner is going to get that. But the whole area is so broad. In particular, I was on radio last week talking about the gaming industry, and you know, I have great concern. We have 10, 11, 12-year-old children playing games that now have loot boxes and mystery boxes, and different countries have taken different approaches as to whether it's actually an e-commerce activity or whether it is actually gambling, and that is a subjective thing that we still have to make a decision on here as part of our amendments to the Gaming and Lotteries Act. But you know, the thrill that people get in opening these loot boxes is akin to that little adrenaline rush that people get when they scratch a scratch card, and that's a very dangerous thing for young children to be exposed to. And I agree with Deputy Cassells. I too like to have a bet at the big race meetings a couple of times in the year, and I'm very lucky that I can go 3 or 4 months without having a bet, and it doesn't bother me either. But where people have that weakness, it is devastating. And I know what a presentation I received not too long ago from health practitioners who deal with people who suffer from addiction. They said, without a doubt, the hardest addiction to recover from is gambling, because you lose your family support network more so than with the others. People can actually understand you needing to take a drink or needing to take a drug if that's what your addiction is. They can understand how that happens. What they can't understand is when somebody sober stands in front of them, promises they'll never gamble again, and then walks out and gambles away money they don't have, that week's grocery buddy or mortgage payment or whatever. The trust breaks completely, and for anybody to get out of addiction, you need that support network around you to do that. So that's how hard it is. You hear stories of people say to me that Cheltenham week, they book their holidays to leave the country in Cheltenham week, because they know when the sports is on the radio, those sections and segments, but that week there's bookmakers on every programme, and there is no getting away from it. It's absolutely pervasive. And if you have that weakness, you can't even watch a soccer match now without it coming up at half time what price Messi is to score in the next goal. It's everywhere. So in terms of advertising, in terms of proper regulation in the gaming industry and all those, we need this independent body, and I'm happy if this committee was to do a little bit more work in this area to complement the work that's been done by the Department of Justice.
Okay, thank you. Well, there is a proposal that we would discuss this further, and what we have are the latest responses from the Department of Justice. And I mean, we have a Gaming and Lotteries Amendment Bill that is still with the Office of Parliamentary Counsel. We have the General Scheme of the Gambling Control Bill, and that does give rise to the intention to establish an independent regulatory authority. So there is arguably robust legislation coming down the line. The question is, is how do we seek to influence the acceleration of such legislation? And perhaps it might be advisable that we might seek to have maybe the Minister in to discuss this issue specifically. Perhaps if I could suggest that Minister Stanton, who is taking a lead role on this, might be the most appropriate minister who might come before us. And perhaps if that suggestion was agreeable, maybe we should propose that and see where we go from there.
I concur. I would propose that. I also think that perhaps as a committee, and we might talk about it in a private session at our next meeting.
Okay.
I think there's a piece of work that we can do, as both of my colleagues have said very eloquently. There is an issue that is not going away, that we need to get a grasp on, and I think in this committee, given that we have a petition before us, we can use that as a platform to discuss the issue ahead of the legislation being published, ahead of pre-scrutiny. It can be part of our scrutiny of impending legislation. But I think it's important that we allow people to come in here and articulate and voice views and concerns on the issue of gaming and the issue of gambling. And I would think as a first beginning that we might do that with Minister Stanton.
Okay, so there is a suggestion there. So in the context of the petition, which is we've agreed is to remain open, I now propose that we formally write to Minister Stanton and ask if he would appear before the committee to discuss some of the responses that have come from the Department of Justice and perhaps take it from there. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. So I'm now moving on to 4018. And the proposal there is to forward a copy of the reply from the Department of Justice to the petitioner and close the petition. Is that agreed? Agreed. Bear with me now. And the final petition is 4218. I propose that we forward a copy of the responses from the Department of Finance to the petitioner and close the petition. Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay. The meeting is adjourned until Wednesday, 30th of January 2019 at 1:30 p.m. And that puts us back to our regular time. And just want to thank you for your attendance here today. Okay. Thank you.